The state of Virginia and the mayor of Charlottesville have declared a state of emergency as we approach that one-year anniversary of the white supremacist rally that turned into a deadly riot last August. It was also considered a low point of the Trump presidency, and that's saying something. That after the president said this, putting the racists and the people protesting the racial hatred on equal footing.
You had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either.
That's not true. A lot of people have a lot of doubt then and now. Well, a new Frontline documentary called Documenting Hate, Charlottesville, it tells the whole story. And I sat down with the ProPublica reporter who was on the ground that day and has followed it, the aftermath for the past year, A.C. Thompson. I want to show a clip here to the audience explaining in large part why you went to Charlottesville and also what you learned when you were there.
You will not replace us. You will not replace us. Charlottesville, Virginia, August 12, 2017. I've been tracking hate crimes since the 2016 president, and I could see that something was happening in this country. The Charlottesville rally was supposed to be about a Confederate monument. But anyone who was paying attention could see that it was about more than a single statue. It felt like a national reckoning around race was coming. And being here would help me understand it.
AC, for many of us who saw the events of 16 unfold from the coasts, who think of some of the folks who show up to the protests as just tiny fringe element here, not representative of so many. I think a lot of people have been shocked, not just what happened in Charlottesville, but in the aftermath, how many people feel, if not liberated, permissive that they can say and do some of the things that we've seen literally in the last year and a half to 2 years. What was your expectations of what you'd see when you went down there, and how surprised were you when you saw what unfolded?
You know, look, I figured that things would be rough because leading up to Charlottesville, we had a series of very bloody racist and far-right rallies. We had Anaheim, where the Klan gathered and 3 people were stabbed. We had a rally in Sacramento where 7 people were stabbed at a Nazi event. We had incredibly violent battles in Berkeley between far-right and left protesters. And so I thought Charlottesville would be a rough scene. And it turned out to be far more violent than I even expected.
And I want to show people another clip as to just how quickly things escalated there.
In a matter of moments, hundreds of neo-Nazis and white supremacists assembled and marched on the university. The police arrived on the scene, but watched from the sidelines as a small group of anti-racist activists were quickly surrounded. One of them, Emily Gorsensky, was streaming it from her phone.
We are pinned in. We are surrounded on all sides by hundreds of Nazis.
When you saw that unfold, were you looking around and expecting not just where's the cavalry, but you have law enforcement from different agencies? Was it, AC, a lack of coordination, a lack of a plan and anticipation was going to happen? Or was there almost an allowance to let this thing get to where it got?
Well, you know, a few different things happened. That night was the University of Virginia police. That happened on the Charlottesville campus, or the campus of the University of Virginia, and they were the lead agency. And what later came out in the report that was commissioned by the city of Charlottesville was that they, at the University Police, were not really prepared to deal with an event of that intensity that was likely to get that violent. The investigators who researched this for the city felt like, hey, the events of Friday night of August 11th set the tone for the mayhem and eventually murder, allegedly, that occurred the next day when a man named James Alex Fields, a neo-Nazi from Ohio, allegedly steered his gray Dodge Challenger into a crowd of anti-racist protesters, killing Heather Heyer.
But clearly, as your report shows, it wasn't just the 2 days. In the year since, there's been a lack of consequences for people who participated. And there's a line, and we're debating it often now as to where does the First Amendment start and stop. But also, I mean, we clearly heard and saw hate speech in living color with what those folks were saying, let alone doing. Why hasn't more actions been taken against the perpetrators, not just the guy who drove that green truck that day here, but for so many other people who did so much?
You know, that's a great question. And I think it's a question that we really wanted to ask because I don't think it had been discussed the way it should have been. What we know now is we know that the federal authorities are looking into these cases a lot more seriously, a lot more closely than they had before. But it is worrisome that you could have a spectacle of that magnitude and really, to this day, almost a year later, have very few people who were responsible be held accountable for it.
So a year later, what has been the messaging to folks who showed up that day in the, with the torches, yelling blood in the soil, and to even some of the folks who seemingly are some of the same players who've gone from rally to rally nationally? Do they feel that their president kind of has their back? And do they feel in any way vindicated by what happened in Charlottesville?
You know, there's kind of three things happening. Some of those people have dropped out of the movement. They said, this is too crazy, it's too dangerous, I don't want to be a part of it. Some people have said, let's go in a different direction. Let's do flash mobs, let's do banner drops, let's do posters, but let's not tell everyone where we're going to be. And the third group has said, you know, what we want to do is engage in terrorism. We want to do political assassination. We want to do guerrilla warfare, and we want to overthrow the government through force of arms. In regards to President Trump, speaking to members of this movement, some of them were quite heartened by his words, both in the wake of Charlottesville and before that. Some of them will tell you, no, he's not extreme enough for us. He's not radical enough for us, and we don't really care about him. But there are definitely those who feel like he's an ally.
AC, maybe it's that we're listening more or that it's just far more ubiquitous, but it seems that there's a lot more anger, palpable anger out there, and race is a flashpoint that a lot of folks are looking to exploit. Which do you think it is? That it was always there and now it's just got a license to be spoken out loud? Or is it that we're listening more closely?
You know, it's kind of both. I think it's absolutely a mix of both. Part of what we're seeing is reporting effect. People like you, people like me, we're reporting these stories, and we've been highly tuned into them for the last couple years because of the national discourse and the political discourse about race and because of these events. And I absolutely believe that there has been a significant uptick in both what I would call casual racism and organized racism. If you look at the hate crime statistics, they have been ticking up pretty steadily for the last 4 to 5 years. And you can see a big spike in those statistics right around the 2016 election. They're not showing a lot of sign of going down. On the organized front, when you talk about the organized groups, there is a massive, massive surge of energy in these groups and all kinds of new groups that have formed just in the last couple of years that didn't exist a couple of years ago. So that, to me, is a sign that we have more activity than we've seen in a long time.
Well, we all remember the incident, but if you want to know what happened both that day and the following and in the year in the aftermath and the consequences of lack thereof, please check out Documenting Hate Charlottesville. AC Thompson, I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Coming up next, New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez on trial for corruption. And even though he was not convicted, he is suffering if you believe the polls. Upstate Congressman Chris Collins just got arrested and he's charged with insider trading. He's still running for re-election. Voters, they seem to be fed up. Are they willing, though, to vote the people out?